Hi, thank you for joining us today as Citrix presents Modernizing the Staff and Student Experience, or Preparing for What's Next with an Agile Remote First Strategy. My name is Todd Smith. I'm a higher education evangelist for Citrix, but my day job is actually being a senior sales engineering manager within Citrix. One of the things we're challenged with today's education transformation, and it's really this is a path we've been going on for a while that has been accelerated as part of the COVID-19, not only the pandemic, but also the response to the pandemic. So I want to take a couple of moments here and identify, where we are and where we're going with this. So if we look at the blue horizon line, we start talking about the continuity of education. And when it comes to the present system, at first, continuity was pretty good. We had students that were able to learn because they had homework and they had assignments that they could do in the gap period. It was just like a snow day. As time went on, the continuity of that education started to drift off. And right now we're at the end of a transition zone where students and faculty and especially administrators are finding ways to get through the challenge of how do we make and ensure students are being successful and educators are being successful in delivering the new version of education. The second horizon line that we want to look at is around security. At first, security was pretty low. We didn't realize a lot of the challenges for security around having students remote or connect remotely on untrusted devices using technology that was built more for consumers as opposed to large scaled out education environments. And finally, the third line, or the green line, is around one of the things that we're going to see as a benefit, and I hope we'll talk about this as we go along, and you'll understand a little bit more about what it means to be an adaptive institution, making sure that students don't fall through the cracks, make sure that the students are successful, and that not only the students are successful, but the educators, teachers, faculty, and staff are just as successful in administrating the new normal when it comes to education. So let's talk about that new normal. If we look at it from students having to be able to conduct work or educators having to be able to conduct work, we want to make sure that they can work however they feel comfortable from wherever they happen to be. That can be their home, it can be from a school if you're lucky enough to go back on campus already, or it could be anywhere that's publicly accessible on whatever device they happen to be on. We want to be able to deliver content whenever it's needed from wherever it's hosted. We also need to be able to ensure that we protect everyone and everything. So with that, we want to talk through a couple of the use cases that are out there and some of the things that we're going to cover. Access to applications. Applications that could be on the web, they could be on the data center, they could be on-prem, they could be loaded locally on the computer labs that the students interact with throughout the day. But we also need to look at how can we replace some of these computer labs that are oftentimes physically located in a building that's not accessible anymore. Or if the building is accessible electronically, it may not be accessible physically. We'll get into some of those capabilities as we go along. We need to be able to securely access and share data, whether it be test results, whether it be a project or a term paper or classwork. It needs to be able to be done securely and easily. We need to be able to foster these collaborative learning experiences in learning environments. We need to be able to ensure that we have computer-based assessments that don't violate trust or violate the honor system that are out there. We need to be able to onboard and offboard students, faculty, and staff quickly. Onboarding a student as part of their joining the school or joining the environment, the classroom environment, and then offboarding them when they go out and finally matriculate or graduate. We need to be able to support modern and cost-effective endpoints. Security and compliance is always top of mind when it comes to securing student data, intellectual property, and maintaining and adapting and adhering to all of the compliance programs that are out there. At the same time, we're being asked to do more things with agility and scalability. And finally, it's around campus health and safety. Whether you're on campus or off campus, you need to be able to ensure that people are healthy and safe. So a couple of things that Citrix does when we talk about how this all comes together. We have the Citrix Workspace. And the Citrix Workspace is really a stack of products or functions and features that we include in this platform called the Citrix Workspace. And if we look at the top of the stack in green, it all starts with intelligence. Intelligence in the terms that we help organize, guide, and automate people's work. That can be done through workflows. It can be done through organizing all of your applications and data into one single place. Being able to guide you through the daily tasks as we talk about the workflows and how to automate some of those workflows as a way to help improve that user's experience. Providing access to applications and desktops. Applications can be virtually, they can be installed locally. Desktops can be anything from a Windows desktop to a Linux desktop can be provided, as well as providing access to all of the different SaaS and web-based applications. Also being able to deliver content collaboration, sharing data that's across the globe, that may be internal, that may be external. It may be with peers, it could be with complete strangers, but you want to be able to have control over that content collaboration. And finally, being able to help manage those endpoints that are out there, whether they be physical endpoints that are desktops, Windows-based endpoints, Macintosh-based endpoints, Chromebooks, large devices, or even smartphones, tablets, things like that. Thin clients can be also included in that unified endpoint management capabilities, making sure those are safe and secure. There's 3 vertical components of this chart that really are functions and features that are across all of these different tasks. The first is around secure access, or the networking layer, being able to provide security across all of these different capabilities. Being able to have visibility in analytics. How do we know what normal should look like? What does a good user experience look like? And finally, you want to make sure that that user has a consistent experience across the board, across the environment, regardless of what device they're on, regardless of what applications they happen to be using. We really focus on 3 distinct areas. One is around experience, the second is around security, and the third is around choice. So if we ask a question, how do you provide staff and students the tech experience they need to be productive wherever they are? We want to look at things like the workspace. The Citrix Workspace is built to help support any type of remote learning, remote work, intelligent work. All of those capabilities, all of those requirements can be delivered through the Citrix Workspace. Everything you need in one place. One single application, one single place to go to get all of the tools and services that you need, regardless of whether they're SaaS and mobile apps. public cloud content? What if it's stuff that's out on the cloud that's being provided by Amazon or by Azure? We could support that. Being able to support your legacy data centers and your on-prem environment, as well as if you're using some external data centers as well. We want to make sure that this is a consistent experience across all different types of devices. Give it a consumer-like experience across all the devices. Provide single sign-on to all of your apps and data. Being able to have something like universal search to reduce the amount of time it takes to search for information across your network or across your entire environment. And finally, being able to provide security based on context and performance. So how do you know what sensitive data is secure when your staff is remote? This is a question that keeps coming up over and over, and that is, how do we understand what someone is doing and how they're working and how successful they are in doing that work? Are they getting frustrated? And how do we make sure that they're secure? Well, it all starts with a zero trust approach. And zero trust is a concept that's been around for quite a long time. We've also heard of this referred to as the medieval castle approach or the moat and drawbridge approach. You have a series of conceptual barriers that are put up, and then we build out based on that. So we look at things like locations, endpoints, where the delivered items are residing. Most organizations have a VPN. They have some way, and it was oftentimes built to allow the IT folks to get remote access to manage and administer systems. It wasn't intended for large-scale use across the entire community, but it was oftentimes built to allow access into a specific data center or a specific on-prem resource location. We also need to talk about single sign-on for SaaS apps, for web apps, mobile and virtual applications, being able to have the ability to manage single sign-on so it doesn't, and limit it based on the individual services or the individual service that needs to be authenticated to it. And finally, we talk about web filtering and browser isolation, protecting the user, protecting the institution from unauthorized access or unauthorized egress. Contextual access with multi-factor authentication across multiple devices or based on location. As an example, you can have a student who is in a lab environment that's doing a research project. They can only access that information from the lab itself. They can't do it from their dorm room or the coffee shop on campus or grandma's house when they're doing remote learning. Being able to support data governance and being able to say these students are only allowed to access these applications during this time, and here's what we're going to do to protect it further. And finally, zero trust really encompasses two main things. It's the trust but verify. And the only way you can trust and verify is by constant monitoring and constant verification. In some cases, it may be showing your badge, the equivalent of showing your badge to the security guard every morning. The security guard knows who you are, but the process is you need to be able to show the badge. If you don't have the badge, you have to go over to the desk and get a temporary badge. Very similar to zero trust. Even though he knows you, he recognizes you by sight, he still may not be allowed by process to allow you to go through the gate. Zero trust with continuous monitoring and verification is a very similar concept. So the question that comes up of how do you make sure you have the agility to respond to whatever happens to come next? The simple answer to that is leverage Citrix to help unify that management across your entire environment. Regardless of what users and devices, where they're coming in from or what they happen to be on or who they are, by putting them through the Citrix cloud or the Citrix workspace, it allows you to do a couple of things. And the first step is move the administrative consoles or the management infrastructure over to the Citrix cloud. That gives you one place to manage your entire environment, one single console to manage the user experience, the applications, the services, the data, the desktops, and things like that. If you want to use public clouds, we can do that. We can support that as well. You can also support it both in the cloud as well in public clouds as well as the on-prem data centers. One of the questions that keeps coming up is around Citrix and Microsoft. This is a 30+ year relationship with Microsoft and Citrix. Microsoft recently rolled out the Windows Virtual Desktop service. Think of it as a virtual desktop as a service in the cloud in Azure. Critical thing here is being able to add value on top of the Windows Virtual Desktop service. We improve things like performance and security by adding in advanced monitoring, environment management capabilities, some additional capabilities around security, such as session recording, to be able to record when a student may be taking a test or when an experiment is being done in a lab environment. App protection and watermarking, making sure that the people who have the need to access information are the only people that do have access to that information. And if you do have sensitive data, when it gets presented on a screen or try to print it out or try to copy and paste it, we have tools around that. And that can be where we add value to the Windows Virtual Desktop as well. The biggest thing is around support for Skype or Teams and being able to have support for teleworkers. We are the first company, and we're officially certified now to support Microsoft Teams in a virtual environment. That means when you're on a Teams session or a video call, the video and audio is synced, and it's the highest possible quality for that connection. So when we started talking about networking, one thing that comes up is around the ability to unify control, performance, and security for every user based on every location and in every cloud. The way we do that is to make sure that we have visibility into all of those connections, and we help manage that. The one way we do that is understanding how people learn and work. And once again, this is reducing the amount of stuff that IT has to manage. What IT has to manage are things like access to SaaS and mobile apps. Well, one of the benefits of choosing a SaaS app is you don't have to manage it on a day-to-day basis, but you still want to be able to maintain and manage the security aspects of that. IT also must manage all of the different repositories where students and faculty and staff are storing information. In some cases, it's okay to put photos and things like that out on Dropbox or your Google Drive, your student's Google Drive, but you may not want to put in that university research paper out there. Being able to leverage public clouds. Almost every single university and education customer has one or two or more public cloud providers that they use. Also, you have your on-prem or your existing data center. How do I merge those together? IT must be able to manage that, and Citrix Cloud is a way to do that. So as we talked earlier about experience, security, and choice, we've addressed each one of these. We've identified access to applications, supporting collaborative learning environments, dealing with the computer lab challenge, dealing with security, computer-based assessments, maintaining the honor of the institution by not allowing the possibility of a cheating scandal because you're going towards computer-based assessments, being able to have and support all of the different compliance programs that are out there, being able to have that choice to pick whatever endpoints the students happen to use or whatever endpoints the faculty happens to use, making sure we support the modern as well as some of the legacy environments as well. Being able to support hybrid cloud deployments and be able to improve that onboarding and offboarding experience. So we do have a couple of use cases here, a couple of business cases where Citrix has been able to help. And in University of Sydney has had a crazy 2020. They started off with wildfires and brush fires throughout Australia. Then those were followed by epic flooding caused by, in some cases, or exacerbated by some of the wildfires. And then they got hit with COVID-19, where they had an impact to students, and they had students that weren't able to get to campus to be able to conduct and complete their education. University of Sydney has 80,000 students and faculty and staff, 22 locations throughout Eastern Australia. They had 20% of their students had to go remote because of the COVID-19 outbreak. Luckily, they had a good amount of their students were able to be on campus, but what that did is it created a lot of collaboration challenges. A couple of things that are of note. They were able to spin up their environment within 7 days of the orders to shelter in place and work from home or learn from home. Feedback from the students was that the experience would often beat that of a locally installed application on a physical desktop in the computer labs. Being able to leverage monitoring for performance and security, being able to provide access to virtual apps and data. So the solution stack that University of Sydney used was our virtual apps and desktops, the Citrix workspace as that common portal or that common user interface, being able to leverage content collaboration, and being able to leverage our networking capabilities, otherwise known as ADC, application delivery controllers, to help manage the networking component of now you've got a lot of students coming in remotely as opposed to students that were coming in from on campus. And finally, being able to secure access by using Citrix access controls. The second use case is around post-university. Post-university is a large university in Connecticut, in the US, being able to support their students, not only from a student perspective, but from a faculty and staff. Most of the students were already conducting classes online, but they needed to be able to make sure that all of the back office staff in an online university, which are folks that are admissions counselors and administrative staff in the enrollment center, right? So as you're enrolling in an online class, you oftentimes need to talk to counselors or career counselors or academic advisors. That is all done through an engagement center or enrollment center, and they needed to be able to move those folks to being in a work from home model. 450 of them were basically moved in the course of a 4-day weekend. Being able to manage the front office side of an institution as well as the academic delivery side was critical for post. They had 3 people plus a small group of support staff do this entire project. And like I said, it took less than 4 days to do that. Couple of solutions that were critical to them. They are using Citrix virtual apps and desktops. They are leveraging the ADCs for the networking, and they're looking to move into the cloud as well as moving into improve the connectivity out to the remote campus locations, or remote professors' offices or remote call centers, and they're looking into leveraging Citrix SD-WAN, which is our software-defined wide area networking. WAN optimization, link redundancy, being able to manage that connectivity is critical for their future. The last case study I want to quickly go over is around Long Beach City College. Long Beach City College is out in California, 26,000 students on 2 different campuses. It's a community college model. Most of the students would go to the campus to learn. as well as you leverage the technology. When they had the shelter-in-place order in March, they needed to change the way they delivered education to keep students on track and make sure that they maintain success. They quickly were able to develop and deploy a solution that not only met their immediate needs, but could also be expanded out into the future semesters as well. They had 30 computer labs basically sitting idle, where they needed to have connectivity to allow students to continue their work on these higher end computer lab machines and be able to do that safely and securely. So they leveraged virtual apps and desktops when needed, but they also leveraged a capability called remote PC, which allowed them to connect back to those physical labs and maintain connectivity to high performance applications, graphically intense applications. We're looking at video editing software. We're looking at graphics design applications, AutoCAD, SolidWorks, things like that. At the same time, they wanted to be able to maintain a highest level of security and performance, so they leveraged the analytics capabilities of Citrix to be able to identify what needs to be addressed, what issues needed to be addressed prior to them becoming a major problem. So quickly running through the education IT use cases that are out there, right? We said earlier, creating this collaborative learning space where students have access to all the applications, data, and services that they need. Building out virtual lab environments, whether they be physical machines that are already invested, that the institution has already made an investment in, or providing them with virtualized labs in a cloud-based scenario. Enabling computer-based assessments to protect the integrity of the student as well as the university or institution. Be able to secure that sensitive research data is another great use case to leverage that content collaboration and secure access story. Regulatory compliance, making that simple, making it easy to use by being able to leverage the analytics and the recording capabilities and the reporting capabilities to be able to show auditors as well as other organizations that we are compliant. And finally, fostering that sense of secure collaboration. Nobody wants to be on a video conference call and having someone drop in who's not authorized to do so. So quickly, we're going to go through access to remote lab environments. The challenge is students need access to these resources, oftentimes without having physical access to the campus. This can also be used as a snow day scenario as well, but for this, it's reducing the ability for the student to have physical access to those devices, but yet the devices are still available, those lab resources. Oftentimes they're very expensive, very valuable, purpose-built resources. And oftentimes you get hit with understanding or quickly being able to scale out other online resources to take the place of these environments or these lab resources. You want to be able to do this in a mindful way of maintaining a consistent and manageable cost model. So with that, we include things like remote access to prevent unauthorized use, right? So providing a remote access solution that increases security, reduces the risk, and improves that user experience. And as we say, it's secure from the endpoint through the data center and beyond, and be able to have the ability to scan that endpoint before access is granted. So someone comes in from a new device, how do we make sure that that device has not been jailbroken or rooted or compromised? Is it grandma's PC that has all kinds of malware and viruses on it? Well, instead of letting them through, we're going to hold off and put them in a quarantine state, or let them know that the device has been compromised and we're not going to let you in until you get that fixed. One comment that came in from a director of campus computing, and this was specific to the COVID-19 outbreak, and this was, Citrix allowed us to right the ship as we switched to distance learning And to paraphrase, we had one less thing to address. One less thing to address could have saved a lot of resource time and labor time. You also want to be able to provide a VDI experience without the additional cost of infrastructure. As we said before, granting access to those physical devices that are on campus and still ensuring that great performance as if they were in front of the computer in the lab environment. You can still deliver that. Leverage the investments that have already been made. And it also reduces the cost of compute because you can, with remote PC functionality, you can turn off and turn on those devices as needed, just like you can when you turn on and off a device or a virtual machine in the cloud. And we can't forget about virtual apps and desktops. This is something that Citrix has been doing for over 30 years, being able to virtualize an application and deliver it to whatever user on whatever device they happen to be on, when they need it, and for as long as they need it. Being able to secure that delivery and be able to manage the cost and those resources. So with that, I think everyone has, we hope that you have had a chance to learn and understand how Citrix can help. There's a variety of additional resources that are available out on the citrix.com website and also via the Citrix YouTube channel. And a couple of those include an overview of our virtual apps and desktops, a discussion of the new normal for remote work, a deep dive into our remote PC access capabilities, as well as some additional use cases from some of our other higher education and K-12 customers. With that, I appreciate your time that you've taken to watch this and to hopefully learn something and hopefully get you inspired to reach out to your Citrix counterparts, your Citrix account team, or if you don't know who your account team is, drop on by citrix.com, leave your information, and we will find you. With that, this is Todd Smith signing off.